All success begins with our taking systematic, purposeful control of the thoughts that we allow to occupy our conscious minds. Now, let me explain the difference between the conscious and the subconscious minds. We know that there is a tremendous difference in function between the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind, for instance, is the discriminating, rational, objective, thinking, analytical faculty of the human mind. The conscious mind is the only part of the human brain that thinks, that makes decisions, and that chooses actions. The role of the conscious mind is to take in information from the environment and to compare that information with previous experiences to determine whether or not it's relevant. It's to analyze that information to decide whether or not some action should be taken, and it is to make a decision. The conscious mind is always making a decision that is either yes or no. The conscious mind is either accepting or rejecting incoming information. Yet every single piece of information that the conscious mind accepts is accepted as a fact by the subconscious. The conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time, either positive or negative, either yes or no. But whenever the conscious mind says yes to a piece of incoming information, the subconscious accepts it instantly and reacts on it instantaneously. If I could give you an example, you're walking out between two cars onto a busy street, and you hear the roar of an automobile engine and a horn. You immediately turn to the right or the left and look, and you identify that it is an oncoming automobile. The second thing that the conscious mind does is it compares that oncoming automobile with all other moving automobiles to determine whether or not the automobile is relevant. If the automobile is a block away, then it is not relevant to one's actions and one continues at the same pace. If the automobile is 30 feet away, traveling at 50 miles an hour and is out of control, then it dictates a very careful analysis of one's situation standing there in front of it. The third step is that the conscious mind analyzes the various alternatives. Should I move forward? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then should I move backward? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, the instant that the conscious mind decides that I should move backward, it says, in effect, get me out of here. The entire subconscious operates the autonomic nervous system and all the muscles and nerves, and instantly we jump back out of the way of the car. It's the same with certain thoughts. If we accept a fear thought, very often when we see something or hear something fearful, whether or not it is real, the instant that we accept that we are in danger or that we are exposed to a fearful event, once the conscious mind accepts it, the subconscious mind accepts it totally, and our whole body reacts instantaneously. That is why we can go from being in a state of complete relaxation to a state of total terror with the passing of 1 or 2 seconds. The key is the thoughts that we accept with the conscious mind. Now, this brings us to 2 very important mental laws. The first of these 2 additional mental laws is what we call the law of concentration. The law of concentration simply says that you do become what you think about, and the more you dwell upon it, the more you concentrate upon it, the more you bring it into your life. The second law is what we call the law of substitution, which, because the conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time, either positive or negative, if we consciously and deliberately substitute a positive thought for a negative thought and keep our mind focused on positive thoughts and ideas, on the person we want to be with the attributes that we want to have, then that is what will grow in our lives, as opposed to the negative, which is what predominates in the majority of people's minds. The subconscious mind has a totally different function from the conscious. The conscious mind is the objective faculty, the subconscious mind is the subjective faculty. The conscious mind decides, the subconscious mind simply obeys. The subconscious mind is like a vast data bank. It's like a vast mechanical computer that stores and retrieves data, and that permanently records every single experience that we've ever had in our lives. It records every thought we've ever had, every decision we've ever made, every picture that we've ever formed in our imagination. And the role of the subconscious is to make all of our words and actions fit a pattern consistent with our self-concept and with our previous programming, so that we always walk, talk, act, think, and behave and perform in a manner consistent with the information that we have accepted as true in the conscious mind. That If we keep our conscious minds focused on where we want to go and what we want to accomplish, that is what begins to come into reality in our lives. And the most powerful thought that we can use in asserting full control over our conscious minds is, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. Because of the law of concentration and because of the law of substitution, as long as we are thinking and saying, I like myself, and picturing ourselves as likable, attractive, high-performing human beings, it is impossible for any negative, discouraging, doubtful, skeptical thoughts to creep into our minds. The key to success is to take full control of the conscious mind, keep our conscious mind totally on what we want to accomplish, and to think continually, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, and keep our minds focused on the things that we desire rather than the things we fear. This is the real application of the law of control and the beginning of all success as human beings. Releasing your subconscious brakes, and it is based on an understanding of what has been termed responsibility psychology. We are 100% totally responsible in every single area of our lives, and there is no possible way of avoiding that. The acceptance of personal responsibility is terribly, terribly important for this very simple reason. If you can imagine a graph or a chart with a line running from the bottom of the page to the top, and on the top of the page we have a high degree of responsibility, and the bottom of this graph or chart we have a low degree of responsibility, or what we call irresponsibility. We find that on the top of the chart there is a one-to-one relationship between the acceptance of high degrees of responsibility for our life and our outcomes and the amount of control that we have in our lives. That we can never have more control over our lives, or more mental well-being for that matter, than we accept responsibility. We also find that there's a direct one-to-one relationship between accepting high levels of responsibility, experiencing a feeling of being totally in control of our lives, and experiencing the feeling of personal freedom. That we can never have more control than we have responsibility, and we can never have more freedom than we accept control. And there's a one-to-one relationship between responsibility, control, and freedom, and positive emotions. And since the key to happiness in life is to enjoy the greatest number of positive emotions over the greatest period of time, what we're really talking about here is how many positive emotions we enjoy on an ongoing basis. At the other end of the scale, the lower end, the scale of irresponsibility, we find that there is a direct relationship between an attitude of irresponsibility and a feeling of a lack of control and a lack of freedom over our lives. And there is a one-to-one relationship between feeling a lack of control and freedom and negative emotions. So in studying negative emotions, I'd like you to imagine a negative emotion tree. And in the negative emotion tree, there grows the predominant negative emotions of our age. And these are doubt, fear, guilt, resentment, envy, jealousy. There are about 54 negative emotions in the textbooks. But if you take them all and boil them all down, all negative emotions ultimately end up as anger, either inwardly directed or outwardly expressed. And there is a lot of nonsense in pop psychology today that suggests that negative emotions are somehow good, that it's okay to have negative emotions, it's okay to express your anger and tell people how angry you are, and the purpose of good mental health should be to learn how to cope with your anger and to deal with your anger and to tell other people about your anger and to live with your anger and so on. Now, the only thing I have to say to that is this. How do you feel when you're angry? Do you feel good when you're angry? Do you feel that this is a normal, natural, healthy, positive emotion that it's good to have and to enjoy and to express? No, the answer is that when you are angry, your whole system functions poorly. When you are angry, your ability to think clearly is often completely lost. It's like a black fog is thrown over your brain. When you stay angry long enough, anger is the cause of high blood pressure. It causes your blood pressure to go up and to stay up, which is one of the leading causes of heart disease and death in our society. There is no redeeming feature whatever of anger. And the idea that somehow anger is good or at the very least necessary or a part of life is simply not true. The critical thing to understand about negative emotions is that negative emotions are not caused from outside, that all of our negative emotions are within us, that every single negative emotion that we experience is our reaction to situations. It is not contained in situations themselves, and that all negative emotions are a sign of insincerity and weakness of character, that there is nothing noble, there is nothing admirable, there is nothing virtuous in having and expressing negative emotions. Not only that, it is possible by understanding where negative emotions come from to remove them and to cancel them and to eliminate them from our lives. So going back to the analogy of the tree, we have the trunk of the tree which goes down to the ground, and the tree has a root system which goes into the soil. Now we know that if you starve the root system of any plant or shrub of the nutrients it requires, that the plant or shrub will begin to die. In using the analogy of the negative emotion tree, if you starve the root system of the negative emotion tree of the nutrients it requires for survival, you will eventually kill the negative emotion tree and the negative emotions that grow in it. And the nutrients that are required for negative emotions are basically two. The first is what we call justification, that we can only experience negative emotions to the degree to which we can justify our right to these negative emotions. We tell ourselves and anybody else who will listen how entitled we are to suffer through this negative emotion because of what somebody or something has done to cause us to feel this anger. If we cannot justify the negative emotion, if we cannot explain to ourselves and to others that we are entitled to this negative emotion because of some event that has occurred, the negative emotion begins to die away. The second element that is necessary, or nutrient that is necessary for the negative emotion tree, is what we call the process of identification. We can only experience negative emotions to the degree to which we identify with the situation and take the situation personally. The most traumatic events can happen in the world that will cause us no negativity at all, and yet the smallest split in our fingernail or sore tooth or the slightest slight or bit of rudeness from somebody can cause us to be in pain and to be angry for hours and even days. We cannot suffer negative emotions unless we can justify to ourselves that we're entitled to them, and unless we take them personally, unless we identify with them personally. The instant that we stop justifying and stop identifying and taking things personally, our negative emotions begin to die. But if we go back to the negative emotion tree, we find that the fastest way to eliminate our negative emotions is to cut the tree down at the trunk. And the trunk of the negative emotion tree is blame. We find that it is not possible to have a negative emotion except by blaming someone or something else for a situation in our life that we find unsatisfactory. Every single negative emotion has as its root the element of accusation, of apportioning guilt, and of blaming someone or something else. The instant that we stop blaming, our negative emotions stop. And the instant that we stop blaming or cut down the negative emotion tree by slashing through the trunk of blame, all our negative emotions stop simultaneously. And the way that we stop blaming is that every single time something happens that causes us to feel angry or upset, we immediately use the law of substitution, recognizing that the conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time, and short-circuit the negative emotion by saying, I am responsible. I am responsible. I am responsible. I am responsible. The more we say, I am responsible, I am responsible, I am responsible, the more we assert complete control over our conscious minds. And as long as we are saying, I am responsible, it is impossible for a negative emotion to get rooted and to start growing in our minds. Remember that we are responsible in every case. As free individuals, we are responsible for every situation that we get ourselves into. And when we assert complete responsibility, we take total control over our conscious minds, and our minds go instantly calm and clear and positive. Next to I like myself, I am responsible is the most powerful positive affirmation that we can use to assert complete control over our thoughts, our emotions, and our destinies as human beings. It is the fastest way to build super kids and high-achieving young people. It's the fastest way to build high-performing employees. It's the fastest way to build human individuals by encouraging them continually to accept full responsibility for their own lives.